Hey everybody! In today's video I'm going to be doing a demo and a review of Art and Glow resin. This stuff comes highly rated on Amazon and other sites that sell epoxy and like resin supplies and all of that. So I am super interested in seeing how this stuff performs. I would like to know why it is so highly rated. So we're going to do that today. Right off the bat, upon like looking at them and all of that, we have the hardener, we have the resin. I'll just read the front off. Crystal clear, self-leveling, resist yellowing, 40-minute work time, non-flammable, so on and so forth. 40-minute work time is a pretty long work time, so that's good. That's definitely a plus. I like that it says resist yellowing. Any company that says that their resin does not yellow is not being 100% truthful. All resins will yellow eventually, to varying degrees, but it will happen. So enclosed with the resin was this piece of paper. That's the directions. And I'm just going to kind of read some of the more relevant parts. It talks about how the temperature should be in the 70s or 80s, 65 degree minimum. And that's because with resin, the warmer the room you're in, the faster it's going to cure. It's like a chemical heat reaction thing. So if you're in a cold room, it just takes longer. So that's why it's talking about temperature. And then this just talks about protecting your surface, protecting your skin, all of that. Now this part was really interesting to me. So it's okay. Pour equal parts resin and hardener into 2 cups and then pour those 2 cups together into a 3rd mixing cup. It's extremely important that you mix thoroughly in this cup, making sure to scrape the sides and the bottom as you stir. That's pretty standard resin stuff. Like you want to make sure that you're scraping the cup and getting everything fully incorporated. Mix for 3 to 5 minutes or until there are no streaks left in the resin. To virtually eliminate the risk of soft spots, pour your mixed resin into a new cup and then stir it for another 20 to 30 seconds or until all the streaks are gone. This eliminates the possibility of unmixed resin from the sides or bottom of the first cup from causing soft spots. It's free insurance, so do it. All right. So my feelings about this are, it's a lot. Like how that even really looks is, so it's going to be 2 cups and you're going to pour your side A and your side B into them. Then you're going to mix them together in another cup and then you're going to pour that into yet another cup. I'm going to do it because it's in the directions, but I honestly feel that if you are an experienced resin artist or resin crafter and all of that, you know how to mix your resin properly without there being spots that didn't cure right. So this feels like overkill. If you're a beginner, then this does not feel like overkill. So yeah, we're going to do that today. We're going to do the whole shebang that it talks about in the directions. So, all right, the other relevant stuff is your finished casting can be removed from the mold after 24 hours. The back part is just talking about if you wanted to coat like a tabletop or something like that. So, and then there's coverage and all that. So there's a lot of information here, which is good. So I'm going to be keeping it kind of simple today, and I'm going to mix it up. I'm going to follow the instructions and mix some up, and then I'm going to pour a really good amount into these little molds. And it's because I want to test the bubbles and all of that. I want to see how well it degasses, which means how well all of the bubbles pop on their own. I read on the reviews that it does a really good job of the bubbles popping on their own. I don't know. I'm not sure I believe that it's going to be like amazing. And the reason is because this resin is so thick. This is some pretty thick stuff. The hardener as well is even kind of thick as far as hardeners go. So the thing about the thick resin and all of that is that it's harder for bubbles to pop on their own. I had this problem with ice resin. So we'll see how that plays out. So I'm just going to mix it up. I'm going to pour like a pretty thick piece, a couple of thick pieces. And then I'm going to pour some into these little bezels. And it's just, all I did was punch out some white paper, seal it into there, and then I'm going to pour the resin into there and see how it yellows over time. I've actually done this with another product that I really like using. About 1 year and 3 months ago, I want to say, I did the same thing with Super Sap CCR to test the yellowing. And this is also a good time to do an update for all of that. Like I'll link the Super Sap CCR video to this and all that. But this is how that performed over time. This piece has been in complete darkness for about 1 year and 3 months. And then this piece spent some time in the sun. I left it out in the sun for like a month, and it's just been sitting around. It hasn't been in complete darkness like the other one. And then the other day I set it back outside for a while to let the sun hit it some more. And it's not bad. It's not terribly more yellow than the one that's been in the complete darkness, but it's not bad at all, especially for being over 1 year and spending a lot of time in the sun. So we're going to do that same test with this product and these bezels with the white paper. So that's what's going on there. Okay, so I have my 2 little measuring cups I'm going to use. On each one, I marked it at 20 milliliters, so it'll be 40 altogether. So that's going to be for my resin, that's going to be for my hardener. I also have paper towels, I have my gloves on, and I have a stick to stir it all in, and then here's my 2 cups for the further mixing process. So I'm going to start with my resin. There was a little foil kind of seal on there, and I already went ahead and took that off. This stuff is so thick. That's what it's looking like. There's a lot of bubbles in there. I don't like how thick it is right off the bat. And maybe I'm a little biased because I'm used to working with stuff that's much thinner, but it was hard to measure right, and I had to take a bunch out, and it's just, I don't know. Okay, so I'm gonna move on to the hardener. And same concept, I'm just gonna pour it in there up to the 20 milliliter line. Okay, my hardener is all measured out, and that doesn't have a bunch of bubbles in it. It doesn't really have any in it. There's some kind of stuck on the bottom, but yeah, there's not much going on there. This still has some just like chilling right on the top. So now the directions want me to pour both of these into this 1 cup. So that's what we're gonna do. My main concern with doing it this way in 2 different cups is that I might not get everything out. Like, I'm gonna do my best to scrape everything I need to out, but I'm just worried it will mess with the ratios. And if you don't get your ratios right between your resin and your hardener, your piece just won't cure right. So yeah, that's my main concern, and it's probably fine. I'm sure it's going to be fine. That looks good. So now I'm going to move on. So thick. I now have both the resin and the hardener in the cup, so I'm going to go ahead and start to mix that up. And I'm going to stir it real slow so I don't incorporate any more bubbles into there, but the directions said to stir for 3 to 5 minutes, so that's what I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna stir, and then I'll cut to a few minutes from now, and it's time to pour it into the other cup. Okay, so it's been about 5 minutes, and I've been stirring, and there is a lot of bubbles in there, so that's what's going on with that. And now I'm going to do what the directions said, and I'm going to pour the contents of this cup into this cup and then stir it again, which I feel is a bit overkill, but if you're new to resin, then it's probably not, so. Okay, so it's been poured into the second cup, and now I'm going to stir it for 20 or 30 seconds more. So I've done everything that the directions have asked of me, so I'm going to get ready to pour the mixture into the molds and the bezels. And on the back of the bottle, there's a resin cheat sheet. And it says, use a torch or heat gun on low, 8 inches from the surface to remove bubbles, and I will do that. I usually like to use a Bic lighter. I feel it works well. I actually had one of my viewers ask me the question if you could use a heat gun to pop the bubbles. And yes, you absolutely can. This even recommends it. I don't like to do it because I sometimes get too close to the liquid resin, and I've blown resin out of the bezel, and I've blown resin out of the mold and all of that because it's blowing air. So absolutely you can use a heat gun. I just use a Bic lighter though. All right, so I'm gonna pour in varying thicknesses into these three. In the first one, I'm just gonna try and aim for a pretty thin layer, the second one thicker, and then the third one even thicker. And then I'm going to take some and I'm going to drop it into the bezels. And I want to make sure that these are about the same thickness. So when I go to gauge the color or the yellowing compared to the one that's been in the dark and the one that's been out in the sun, like I want that to be as accurate as possible. So definitely want these to be the same thickness. Okay. So now that the resin is in everything it needs to be in, I'm going to give it about 10 minutes and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to run a lighter over the top of it and we'll check out what's going on with the bubbles. It does look like all of them are rising to the surface pretty well though, so maybe these will be pretty clear pieces. I don't know, but I'll be back in about 10 minutes to check it out and pop some of the surface bubbles. Okay, so it's been about 10 minutes, and coming back and looking at them, a lot of those bubbles went away. Like, it's getting surprisingly clear. I can see that there's still micro bubbles in the thicker pieces, but in like this thinner side, I don't see very many bubbles at all. So maybe it is going to degas really well, and I know the lights are kind of creating a glare, but maybe that'll help a little bit. So I'm gonna come in with my Bic lighter and I'm just going to go across the top. I want to take my glove off real quick for this though, because I don't want to melt it or something. So that's that. I'll do it again as more bubbles start to rise. So in about 10 more minutes, I'll do it again, but it's looking pretty good. The pieces in the bezel look really good as well. Yeah, so I guess we'll come back tomorrow, pop these pieces out of the mold, and kind of see how I feel about them. So I will see you in 24 hours, which is the cure time that this product says that it takes. Like, that's how long. So, oh, there you go. So I will see you in 24 hours. It's the next day and the pieces have cured and all of that. And I'm sure you've noticed there is a second row here now of these molds, and I'll explain why. So in this one is the Art and Glow resin that we did the demo of. And in this one is a resin that I usually use, Super Sap CCR. I use it pretty religiously. Now the reason that I did some pieces with that is because they're the same thickness as these ones right here. So these are the same thickness. These are about the same thickness, and then I didn't make a smaller one. And it's because I want to compare the amount of bubbles. Just looking at this before I even pop it out, there is a ton of micro bubbles, and that's the type of thing that you can get out if you can like put it in a water bath, put it in warm water, and that will help with the bubbles. You could also use a vacuum chamber, but the directions didn't specify to do any of those things or suggest any of those things, so I did not do them. And with this one, it was the same. There was no warm water bath, there was no vacuum chamber, there was none of that. So I'm just gonna compare a much thinner formula to a much thicker formula. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and pop out the pieces now. So we're gonna take out the thickest one. I'd hate touching the inside of these. Okay. Now we're going to pop out that middle sized one. And then this is the thinnest one. All right. So there we go. Now I'm going to take out the other pieces to kind of compare them to. Okay. So I'll put these aside for now so we can actually look at what's going on here. Yeah, there we go. That black background helps. That is a ton of bubbles, a ton. And like I said, you can heat up the resin. I actually, in my Resin Basics for Beginners video, I show you how to use a water bath to heat up the resin because it will help with the bubbles. But I don't know if with a formula this thick it would help that much. Even putting it in a vacuum chamber would not be a great time because it's so thick that it would take a long time to even get all the bubbles out. So that's the thickest piece. And then let me just show you with a thinner resin that I like to use. This is the difference, and both of them were treated the same way. There was no warm water bath, there was no vacuum chamber. I mixed, I poured, that was it. Okay, so here is the middle thickness piece. Also a ton of bubbles. It looks like it was because this was the bottom. So it looks like it had the right idea and it was trying to get rid of them, but yeah, that's what that's looking like. Oh, compared to the piece with the thinner formula. And then this is the thinnest piece. And it has less bubbles, but it's still a lot. So yeah, the hardness is pretty good. I'm happy with that. I feel like it's a very hard cure. I am going to do a test with them. I'm going to take the formula I usually use. I'm going to take this formula and I'm going to leave them out in the sun for like a month or something to see what's going on with the yellowing and all that. So I can't really comment on the yellow resistance because I am going to have to wait. So there's those, and then here's the pieces, the bezels that I poured the resin into so I can do the yellowing test I was talking about earlier. You can't really see on camera, but there is a bunch of bubbles even in this super thin cast. So I guess my final thoughts on it are, would I switch over to it? I probably would not. I'm sure I can find some applications for it that I can mix glitter in with it and that type of thing, but because it disguises the bubbles, and even like pigmenting it will disguise the bubbles. But as far as using it for like clear stuff, like just keeping it clear and using it, I do not think I would go for it. It's all right. I don't understand why it's so highly reviewed, especially with the bubble situation. So yeah, I guess that's my stance on it. I'm not trying to drag Art and Glow. I'm not working for any other resin company. It has nothing to do with anything like that. This was just an honest review and how I feel about this product. So I guess that is it. So I will go ahead and thank you so much for watching. And if you liked this video, please consider liking and subscribing and commenting and all of those things that go with YouTube. I hope you have a great day.